call the committee of the whole meeting together for October the 14th. We acknowledge that this meeting is being held in traditional territory, our friends and our neighbors and our Treaty 8 partners of the Fort Nelson First Nation and the Prophet River First Nation. We recognize our treaty and we recognize the rights within that treaty. And we also recognize the contributions and the enduring presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available to the public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded. Are there any council additions? No, is there any public comment? Is there anybody online that wants to say anything? Okay, everybody's okay with the agenda? Okay. Floor is yours. You can give us a bit of a background.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Nice to see Mayor and Council. Thank you for coming together for this community of the whole. This project is to complete a economic diversification strategy. So we do have a previous economic strategy that was done in, I think it was completed in 2019. The work and the engagement was done in 2017, 2018, leading up to that. So it's not overly old, but it's a very large document. And just the changes in our community, the changes in industries and technologies have changed drastically over the last number of years. So doing this diversification strategy really looks at where are opportunities now, where should we as a municipality, where can we actually put time, energy, money, focus for the biggest impact for our community and the economy, not only in Fort Nelson, but in the region. So that's kind of the goal of the project. So we launched it with Deloitte, who is just driving into town right now. So hopefully they'll be here in a couple minutes. Earlier this summer, the project is quite inclusive of steps and data review. So they have started looking at the economic base analysis, doing forecasts and local impacts of global trends, investment readiness assessments, and then now we're coming up on the community engagement. So the first one being with you this evening. And then we've got 4 different industry workshops scheduled for tomorrow and Thursday. As well as a Chamber of Commerce luncheon on Thursday for small businesses. And then we're also offering different community members or people who may have specific information or key knowledge sets, interviews as well as part of this. And then we'll continue on with some more analysis and engagement, review of all the engagement. A SOAR assessment, which is the newest version of a kind of SWOT analysis. And then I believe that we're then back with you in November. So hopefully we'll be back with council for reviewing where we get to and having council help with prioritization. And then that'll lead into the draft strategy and implementation plans, hopefully by early spring. So that's kind of the high level of the project. Any questions on that? No?
How did we select Deloitte?
We went through an RFP process. So we had an RFP process. We had quite a few responses for this specific opportunity. And we had a review committee of 4 or 5 that reviewed each of them. And then we met together, reviewed them collectively and used a scorecard to find the company that worked or that offered the best.
Okay. What does staff hope to achieve with this?
So we're really hoping, or we will. Feel like that was a trick question.
It wasn't a trick question, but
so the goal having this is to have a really clear vision of what our community where we can actually put time and energy so that we're not spinning our wheels or we're not getting distracted by all these little tiny things, so that we can actually make hopefully an impact and help diversify the economy in a logical backed way.
Hmm.
Yeah. Whereas right now it's,
We're sort of hit and miss.
yeah,
Funding comes along or funding opportunities come along, we take advantage of it without necessarily an end goal.
yeah.
I mean, every
sometimes-
project has an end goal, but
Yeah,
can
yeah.
we dovetail them all together to really come up with a strategy that we might be able to sell
Yeah.
to an sell? Convince an investor, I guess.
Yeah, well, and where us as the municipality can really make a difference.
Hmm.
Because there are some things where the municipality isn't the body that's gonna likely make the decision. But there are things that we can do that would help to entice
Yeah.
that industry or new business or,
Go ahead.
I think it's a great endeavor. Anything that we can do to strengthen or diversify our economy, I think is just really just something we need to be doing right now. Who's going to be engaged other than the stakeholders? Are we pulling in the community? Are we pulling in business people, the First Nation? Who will be involved?
yes, we have reached out to Fort Nelson First Nation as well as Prophet River First Nations and had a conversation already with Prophet River First Nations and will continue to open those channels of communication. We've put out all the workshops, so we have sent out invitations directly to businesses that we think fit into a specific workshop topic, just so that they're extra aware, and especially anybody can attend any of them. There's value, but if we're having a conversation and 90% of the people in the room are experienced in transportation, we just know that that's going to end up being one of the main topics, and allow hopefully people to get a little bit deeper into that. But we've sent out invitations via email to businesses or groups that we know about through the Chamber of Commerce, through our Facebook, through the newsletter.
I'm
Yeah.
scared to ask this question. Are you getting any responses? Like, do you have people who will attend?
We have some,
Oh, good.
yeah, not huge numbers, but it's also, yeah, workshops. Or I don't know how to.
The
say
reason
it.
I'm asking that is because I'm worried about fatigue, questionnaire fatigue.
Yeah.
Where we've been doing engagement fatigue. We've been doing a lot of that, which is good, but people get tired when they don't necessarily see an end,
Result.
something coming out of it. They can get tired of it
Yeah.
but if we're getting some, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and there's been some interest, where people have responded and that they're just unavailable right now, but we're working with them to see if we can do an interview or other opportunities as well. So people have been responding, and we have some for the workshops for sure.
Good. Go ahead.
Not to look in the past, but being involved in the other economic development strategy and just kind of wondering why we are going through all of that again, other than, yes, times have changed and it was a very large document. And I don't know how much action was driven out of that document. Maybe a lot was, maybe a lot wasn't, but are we like including what we learned and what was missing in that document moving forward? Like, we're not just keeping that on the shelf.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're using that, have provided that as a background research or guiding document to build upon. And then this one will give us less, because that one had, I think, like 150 different potential actions, and it didn't really have much prioritization to them. So it was kind of like throw a dart at the wall. So this one will join us. This one will give much more clear guidance on where the priorities are, where we can make an impact, so that we don't have to guess. But yeah, the previous strategies have definitely been taken into consideration
Okay,
and looked at.
thanks.
So I've primed them for you.
Excellent.
Can we maybe pull up? Would you like them to pull up the slides
Yes, sure.
here? Okay.
So welcome.
Did you drive?
From Fort St. John. We both flew in there. We wanted to get the experience of that. and get it on our-
Microphone on?
Oh.
Speak button,
Yeah.
right in front of
Yes, okay. Is it easier
You'd have to
now?
lean in, pick it up. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. That makes sense. Yeah, I think the next trip will come straight into Fort St. John, but it was nice to have the experience because we heard that people kind of go both ways depending on circumstances. So bit of an experience.
Well, welcome to Fort Nelson and Northern Rockies. We will do a quick round of introductions so that you can kind of get to know who's in the room. So I'll start. I'm Rob Fraser. I'm the mayor.
John Roper, Regional Councilor.
Souls Regional.
Scott Perry, CEO.
Erin Lavale, Deputy CEO.
Alicia Gregory, Communications.
I'm June McIver, Corporate Manager.
Krista Vanderstein, Regional Development Officer.
Jamie Venstruth. I'll give a bit of a longer introduction if that's okay. So I'm with Deloitte. I'm the project manager for this. We'll have a slide coming up with the full team. I'm the overall project manager. We've got three of us that are doing the bulk of the work, myself and Chris and our colleague Amanda, who you'll meet sometime along the way here. I'm fairly new with Deloitte, only about a year and a half, but I've been consulting in BC for 25 plus years. I've never actually been to Fort Nelson, so I was very happy to make my first trip here today. But I've done work in the past with Resource Municipalities Coalition, Northern Development Trust. So I've got lots of experience across the province and in the north. So I'm really looking forward to working with you on this one. I'll pass it to Chris.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jamie. So my name is Christopher Knock. I'm a senior consultant in Deloitte's Economic Advisory. I've been with the firm for about a year. I work on mostly projects in BC and Alberta. And so obviously Fort Nelson has an economy somewhere in between those things in terms of what we tend to see in the rest of northern BC and what we see elsewhere in northern Alberta as well. I used to work for Pacific Economic Development Canada, so I've had the opportunity to work with businesses and communities across the province in a few different contexts. So it'll be interesting to apply that to this project in this case and understand also where some partnerships can be leveraged, whether that's funding partnerships or simply working with other communities or working with other organizations and leveraging some of their programming. So yes, we'll have more to say on that in a moment.
Lorraine Gerwing, Regional Councilor.
You guys want to introduce yourselves, please?
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to turn most of this over to Chris, but just as an introduction, so we're getting underway today with our consultation with the Economic Diversification Strategy. So we're in town with this first meeting, and then over the next 3 days, meeting with a variety of other business groups and individuals and some of the other associations in the community connected to economic development. We previously met with Prophet River First Nation with a call a few weeks ago. We'll be meeting with Fort Nelson. I'm not sure on this trip or at a later date, but we will be including a consultation with our Indigenous partners as well. Just as a broad introduction, we've got a number of discussion questions coming up here, but overall, because we're kicking off the project here today, this is really about hearing from you. This is your strategy and it's our job to help you put it together. So it's really trying to give us a good understanding of what you're looking to achieve through this strategy and some of the initial thoughts you may have on opportunities and things that you are interested in pursuing, things that may have been tried in the past and didn't work, or any of that sort of history or local insight that you have. We do a lot of these community type strategies across the country, from communities large and small, all across the country. So we have a certain amount of knowledge of different types of programs and, you know, where to find data and do number crunching and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, the strategy has to be informed by the local knowledge that we cannot bring to it. So that's why we're here talking to people in the community who have that local experience of what conditions are like operating businesses here and working here. So really looking forward to getting a lot of learning done in the next few days. If we could just, I'm not sure who's advancing the slides. Okay. So I mentioned our team. So over the left-hand side, Paul Blaze, the managing, sort of the partner overall, the head of the project, but the core team is the three of us beneath that, myself, Chris and Amanda, who I expect Amanda will be here at a later trip that we're doing for the project. Deloitte obviously is a large company. The team that works on this type of municipal regional economic development is a small group. There's only about 25 of us, 20 to 25 of us within Deloitte. And these are some of our colleagues. We're not sure exactly what all the issues are going to be, but we've tagged a few people there who have certain areas of expertise. So we think they might have, we'll bring them in, I guess, when it makes sense. So Clark with tourism and destination development, Sarah with workforce, and Rebecca more the marketing resident attraction side of things. There are others, depending what comes up, other people we could bring in if the case calls for it. We can go on to the next one. So we started the project in August with our first online meetings with the staff team here, and we've been doing a bunch of the initial background review, doing a bunch of the data research, reviewing previous studies, and getting ourselves up to speed on the situation here. A lot of that work is finished in draft, and it's going to inform our discussions over the next few days. You will be seeing a version of that coming out in the future. But so we're starting the community engagement part, as I mentioned, meetings with business groups, individual businesses, other local associations, and so on. It's not confined to these 3 days. If people aren't available or don't fit into the schedule, we'll be following up with some additional calls and interviews virtually, as the case may be. We'll be finalizing and wrapping this all up in an engagement report that summarizes all the work to date that staff will review. The SOAR assessment, that's stands for strengths, opportunities, aspirations, risks, and results. So it's a sort of an updated version of the SWOT you may be familiar with: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Really, the aspirations part is really bringing in what you're hoping to achieve out of this, and we're also bringing in the results part. So trying to bring a measurement angle to this as well, because ultimately all of these strategies need to have a way to figure out if you're being successful or not, and measuring how well you're doing. And that will take us through most of the rest of the fall. We'll be doing some based on the initial framework of the strategies, and then we'll be coming back to council. So we will have a series of directions, possible ways to go in the strategy, and bringing that back to you to work through that with you, see what resonates with you, what you think might not work, and so on. And we'll be doing that in person early in the new year. And then finally, after that, finalizing the plan and working towards project completion, targeting April, so roughly 6 months from now. And with that, we've just got a summary of some of the initial work that we've done. So we'll sort of walk you through some of that as I lead up to the discussion. I'll just pass it over to Chris for that.
Perfect. Well, obviously, Jamie mentioned we'll be delivering an engagement report that'll have a lot of detailed information, not only related to our sort of stakeholder consultations we're doing today, but some of the data work we've done already to date. We procure access to a number of proprietary data sources that give us municipal level economic information. Demographic information is a bit more up to date than what StatsCan is already providing. Some of it's actuals, some of it is based on modeling that these companies perform. And then we also have a number of public sources that we're able to leverage. BC Stats, for instance, is a provincial statistical body that does a lot of municipal level information that we're able to take advantage of. I can't go over everything in brief today. A lot of that will be detailed in the report, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the main data points to context set this conversation. Obviously, economic diversification is a very logical path, not just economic development in a broad sense for the Northern Rockies. If we look at some of the information we have here, you know, I pulled two of the top industry categories that we tend to see when we're talking about natural resource extraction related work. Mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction, and then a bit of a mouthful here, but agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting. those, obviously, you're talking a lot about natural gas and oil production in the top category, not so much mining. In the latter category, you're talking a lot about forestry. Those two industries together account for about 40% of all of the estimated revenues earned in the Northern Rockies. And of course, if you were to expand it out to upstream or downstream types of production, so companies that produce the parts that go into natural gas production, or companies that are then taking timber and refining it into some sort of value-added product, those things altogether will add up to a much more significant number. So this is certainly an economic profile of a community where diversification makes sense. And it's also worth noting that diversification doesn't have to mean diversification away from certain opportunities. It's not saying you can't leverage opportunities that are already relevant in the community, but it is simply to say that there's an added emphasis to maybe look for new opportunities that are available, so there's a little bit less economic risk. And we've certainly seen with affairs in the news why economic risk can be a bit of a challenge moving forward in certain sectors. We can move to the next slide. Highlighted here 4 key assets that we've already identified for the community, and these are things to build on and things that I think are really unique and special. So the first, there's quite a lot of access to commercial and industrial land and properties in the community. Now, it's a bit of a double-edged sword because, of course, saying that there's a lot of empty land or a lot of empty buildings isn't always a desirable thing. But a lot of communities we work with actually just don't have anything. They want to attract investment and they have nothing for the investment to move into. So actually having access to land and buildings and places for companies to occupy is more unique and is something that we can actually build off of. Another piece here is, of course, the affordable housing. Northern Rockies is not quite like the rest of BC, where you see in the Lower Mainland and all the challenges there. And of course, there's other discussions about, do you have the right mix of housing? Is there the right availability of rental housing? Is there too much, say, single family homes that maybe people can't afford, depending on the type of work they're doing? So there are challenges related to the mix. And it's my understanding there's been a housing needs study done quite recently that we did also review. So we'll have more to say on that. But affordable housing is certainly an asset when you're talking about a province where people have challenges starting a family, people have challenges kind of establishing themselves on the ground, and you don't need to necessarily attract everyone. In fact, I've heard, I think it was Lisa when we had a conversation with her, we don't want to attract everyone. Kind of ruins the character. But there will be a subset of people that really value what a place like Fort Nelson, for instance, has to offer. And so it's really about targeting those people and making sure that they can participate in the economy and feed back into it. When it comes to some of the supports, the workforce supports for different industries, there's a relatively high incidence of people with trades designations and apprenticeship education in the Northern Rockies as a whole. It's about twice the provincial average. And we've seen in other communities that can really support establishment of light and heavy industry. So that's definitely an asset that we will be looking to build on. And when it comes to relationships with nearby Indigenous communities, I don't want to paint with broad strokes as to what that looks like in every context and to suggest that there aren't opportunities for improvement. But we've worked with a number of different communities, including in BC, where relationships with local Indigenous communities are very underdeveloped and are sometimes hostile. And that is a huge impediment to economic development. I think our experience thus far has actually been quite positive, and the relationships we've seen have been quite positive. So it's something to build on, and I think it's a key strength of the community compared to some others. We can move to the next slide, please. Of course, there are challenges. I've highlighted a few on the next few slides, including this one. One is population decline or projected population decline. So these are stats from BC Stats, so the province's statistical agency, and their estimates for how the population is going to change year over year between now and 2030. You can see the dark lines are for the Northeast region for a whole. The lighter purple are for the Northern Rockies specifically. You can see the estimates are suggesting there's going to be sharper declines for the Northern Rockies as a whole. And these estimates are essentially built by looking at what are the fertility rates in a particular area, what are the mortality rates, how is that population pyramid changing over time, what economic factors might be influencing people migrating in or out of a particular region. So they're estimates, and it's certainly not a guarantee that this is what it's going to look like. And one of the pieces of the strategy, of course, is to try to mitigate this and to try to improve this picture a little bit. We can move to the next slide as well. A key component of that, of course, is the aging of the population. Now, this chart, I've tried to build it in a few different ways that are a little bit easier to read, but there's two sets of lines I want you to pay attention to. These are essentially different age cohorts in the Northern Rockies. The purple lines are the younger ages, the green lines are the older ages, and the dashes are essentially the youngest and oldest populations. You can see the youngest population and general younger populations are expected to experience a gradual decline through to 2030. Meanwhile, the oldest populations are actually expected to increase quite rapidly. In fact, the 75 plus age category is expected to about double by 2030. So only in 5 years, it's quite significant. So that's part of what is helping to explain that projected population change that we're seeing. We can move to the next slide. A challenge that's not going to be a surprise to anyone in the community is, of course, I would say energy security is what I'd call it. Challenges with grid access. Of course, there are the connections to Alberta's electrical grid, as well as the Fort Nelson generating station. I know that BC Hydro is looking at solutions to this now, and then there are other developments like Fort Nelson First Nation, their geothermal projects. Those will all, some of the results of that remain to be seen as to how that's going to affect things. But of course, this presents a challenge when it comes to utilities capacity potentially. So it's something to keep an eye on. And there have been interruptions, from my understanding, due to wildfires as well. So it is certainly a challenge that we've observed. We can move to the next slide. Thank you. And then I've camped these under the moniker of access. So, of course, one aspect is aviation facilities, and we've experienced that today, right? Part of the reason that we flew into Fort St. John and we drove up was to get that experience of that lack of access and some of the challenges. And we know that has manifested in a few other areas as well. Difficulty attracting, for instance, needing fly-in doctors in some cases, and how that impacts things. And then it's also a resident access thing and a worker access thing. If you need people to come into the community for fly-in, fly-out work, it is a bit of a challenge. Our information suggests that there were about 3 aviation facilities. I know that only about one, the Fort Nelson Airport, is really operational as a commercial asset, whereas the other 2 are a little bit more intermittent and maybe more recreational. Another key challenge, of course, is commercial railway access for businesses that need to ship goods out of the region. CN is a bit funny. If you look at their transit calculators, they will quote you these very convenient and short shipping estimated times. I'm led to believe that those are not particularly accurate, and that consistency of rail has been a challenge moving forward, and there's some necessary upgrades. So rail access is another thing that, while we can't necessarily say the community should just resolve that, because of course there needs to be provincial support in many of those areas, but it is something that we can highlight and provide additional justification for the municipality to take to the province and note where improvements are most necessary. We can move to the next slide, please. Okay, I'll maybe pass it back over to Jamie to lead us into some of the early discussion questions.
Maybe before we jump right into that, is there any reactions or any questions or comments on what we summarized so far? Did we capture it accurately? Anything you saw you didn't think was fully accurate, or just any overall feedback?
I'm just intrigued by the population stats and where we're headed. I have no idea that we could be potentially losing another 10% of our population, and that our 75% or 75 plus population is going to double. That's a significant finding for me, just learning this now. So I appreciate all the information, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where the strategy takes us in this post-COVID world, and the opportunities that are here. Because I mean, as you stated, there's just boundless opportunities. It's almost the Wild West if you're trying to start an industry here. So I'm really appreciative of your time and all the information you brought so far. Can't wait to see what I learn.
Thank you so much, Councillor Roper. I guess I'll just say, I mean, they are estimates, but definitely this is why with a lot of these communities, we focus so much on resident attraction and retention, because it is critical. We rarely come into a community and the story is they're ballooning with people and they just need more ideas for what to get them to do, right? It's a common theme. And so we'll bring in Rebecca, we'll bring in Sarah, 2 of our subject matter experts who are really specialize in those types of areas, and they'll help to provide us with a lot of information to support that. So it's definitely a key priority of the strategy moving forward.
So you're telling us a lot of things that we do know. Oh, thank you. Well, you're telling us a lot of things that we do know, right? The population getting older, that was one of the reasons that we spoke to the Ministry of Health and the department around seniors. So it's interesting that you pulled all the same stuff that we've been really looking, so it's obviously available. The one thing that I'm interested in though is where you got the information with respect to the trades and apprentices. Because that doesn't seem to be fairly well known. It's a mark that we're missing. I had a conversation with a fellow the other day who was, I was talking about, well, why wouldn't you locate Fort Nelson? And why would you consider someplace else? And that was, well, you just don't have the workforce. You just don't have the people that we need, and so we would want to locate someplace where there's quite a few more operators, this particular guy. So it's I'm interested in where you got that information. Was it just straight out of the census or did you get it from somewhere else?
Thanks, Mayor Fraser. Well, that information came from the 2021 census. So that is the most recent source. There are modeled estimates for some demographic information like education that go down to a municipal level, but to be honest, they're not really credible. They're not really based on anything, and so we wouldn't want to report that. Of course, there will be the 2026 census coming out relatively soon, May 2026, I want to say. That'll provide a bit of an updated picture as to what we're looking at. One thing that, and I'm glad you brought that up, we can talk to business about is, are there particular trades or apprenticeship or vocational type backgrounds that you're having difficulty finding to support your business? Do you think there's an oversupply in certain areas where there maybe isn't as much demand? And so maybe unpacking that picture will be something that we want to carry forward and ground truth with businesses, since we don't have the macro data that we would want on that type of information.
Yeah, I think you really want to be looking at, because it's been slow here for a long time. And so people have been cutting back on employees, and just look at what happened with North River last year. There was 65 families there, and those were fellows who had trades, a lot of them. And so, I think you're going to have to really be digging deeper than just the local, what's missing here. Because I think we've got a lot from here out, right? So they could be available, but they're earning a living right now outside of the community, which is backwards to what we've always, it's always people coming in. Now we see people going out and they've got good trades and so trying to anchor those folks here with a good rounded economy is something I think we need to be looking at. Go ahead, Dan.
My perception of some of the numbers there where you gave estimated numbers regarding the two categories of industry and so on, I think they're highly inflated relative to where we are today. I think too that if you'd show up at Northern Metallic on any given weekday morning, you'd have the businessmen of the community sitting around complaining about or thinking about how wonderful it was in the old days and how there's absolutely zero industry now. So the baselines, I think you need to recognize from a baseline perspective, when we're talking ECDEV, we're talking about people that by and large industry is in survival mode. It's all it is a survival mode. So it's not as though you can just jumpstart with what you've got and turn it into something it's not as though it's sitting there waiting to just expand. It's many of them have shrunk to just survival mode, and it's very, very difficult to expand from that. And of course, the role of a council and so on is to have influence, to represent a community and to influence things that are going on. You can't make things happen, but there's a lot of external influences or that actually dictate in the world of industry whether something can actually happen or not. And we've been affected by forest fires on a grand scale. And we're affected by land use planning on a grand scale. We're affected by caribou survival strategy on a grand scale. And so you try putting into context that when you've got a historical industrial minded people, most of the contractors here are industrial minded. They consider the good old days where there was lots of industry, and they know the reasons the industry no longer exists, and they see the missing railway, and they see the missing air traffic, and they see the missing runway at the airport, and they see, the shrinking that has happened. And it's very difficult I get that, like, where I see the value of these discussions is around trying to work with what we do have and building on it. And it's just that we really do need to have an accurate understanding of where we are now so that we know what we can build on. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Souls. Yes, I actually should have maybe qualified those numbers a little bit more than I did. Those numbers came from what we refer to as an input-output model, which is essentially trying to model the flow of money through an economy. And so they're not actuals, right? So for instance, it's taking it a higher level of geography and trying to say, based on what we know about the Northern Rockies economy, what do we think is going on? That's one aspect. And then the other aspect is that those numbers are actually a few years older than current day, which could reflect some or would not reflect some decline potentially that's already taken place. So it's good to ground truth that is inflated, and there are going to be challenges that are not seen. And again, speaking to some of the conversations that we'll have moving forward with some of those resource industries, some of those extraction-based industries and different types of industry, we'll want to understand what they would need in order to scale up or get out of that survival mode that you just mentioned. So I'm glad you brought that up. So thank you very much.
Great, thanks. Couple slides back, you were talking about workforce training, and I think that that has been something that this community has been lacking for a long time. Northern Lights College used to provide workforce training, and they no longer do that. Luckily, we have a private company that provides some workforce training. In terms of apprenticeship training, though, there is very few opportunities in the community. There's a dual credit program with the high school, but those kids have to go to Dawson Creek. So grade 11, no, grade 12. So in grade 12, they're leaving. So we no longer have those opportunities in the community. And I think that is a real core, like if we can't even train our own local people for the jobs that are in our community, that is a huge miss. And so I don't know how that's going to factor all in there, but I believe that it's really hard to look forward if you don't have a core service. And how do you build out without that?
So I think that makes a lot of sense. And we've seen that. We worked recently on, we're basically in the final stages. The strategy's been adopted on a similar project in the District of Houston, in central BC, and very much the same challenge where there's people with the expertise locally, but often people trying to break into an apprenticeship role have to go 2 hours, 3 hours away to gain that type of education. There are a few different models we can look at, whether it's locals who have the specialization trying to set up operations locally, or whether how that feedback mechanism can look. Obviously, it's not an easy challenge to resolve, but again, speaking to some of the comments I made earlier about how workforce development and workforce attraction, workforce retention are all crucial, right? They're sort of the building blocks for all sorts of other types of economic opportunities. You need the people, not just sort of the assets. So it's certainly something we'll take very seriously as a priority of the strategy.
And just one other thing, I don't think you can have economic development in the region without like a health lens. And I didn't see that. Maybe that's coming, but that would just be something that I would be interested in.
Yeah, we were actually having a conversation when we were driving over. There's some interesting models around how to increase healthcare access in rural and remote communities. There's a community on the island quite recently is taking the approach of actually hiring doctors, family doctors as municipal staff, and it's being taken up in Ontario and some communities in Alberta. We'll look at that as an option. I'm actually a little bit biased. I love this subject. My wife is a medical student and wants to do family practice, and maybe rural, we'll see. I don't know where I want to live in the future, but it's certainly, it's a common issue, especially the further north you go. And it will be a component in the strategy one way or another. There's a lot of provincial buy-in that's required for some of the other solutions beyond hiring them to the municipality directly, of course.
We've done a lot of work, but the Ec Dev department can definitely bring you up to speed on that one.
Okay, thank you for those comments. It's really helpful to get some of that local perspective on what the numbers really are. Okay, if we can just maybe take a step back from the current day and we got a question here just to have you think about what success looks like for this project and for your local economy. So someone's writing an article 5 years in the future, and the economy of the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality has really turned around. You're having a lot of success, a lot of new investment, employment opportunities, and so on. What would a headline look like? What would success look like if someone was describing the Northern Rockies in 5 years' time?
I'll start.
Yeah.
I think that when I look at timelines and the last 5 years went by really quite quickly.
Yeah.
And the previous 5 years before that was even faster. And the things that some of us have long hoped and worked toward having a forest industry in our community. We're actually seeing where there's finally an interest, there's enough interest to be glad there's interest. So in 5 years from now, one of the things I'd love to see is at very least a moderately small or medium-sized forest company would be operating in this community, as well as getting on with the managing of the forest in a way like, let me start that again. I'll say that historically we had a forest industry that did a lot of planting of plantations in the area. We have wonderful plantations. They're growing fabulously and so on. It's like a field, it's like a garden, and nobody's picking the weeds. Nobody is tending them. And I think that there's a forest industry by itself, a type of forest industry of managing the existing forest land that we've already touched and bringing it back into productive scale. It's like low hanging fruit that's invisible until someone starts talking about it. Anyway, forest industry, I can see that. The other thing that is dear to my heart, and I'll be talking with you more later about it myself since I'm going to be visiting the ag side of things, is that we're watching the aging out of most of our farming community is aging out, and very few of them have anyone following them around. And many of the farms that we do have, which are not near enough, will be disappearing off the radar. And so some of us are successfully farming, and we know that we need to broaden the awareness of that so that, you know, we're proofing all sorts of ag ideas that are working really well here, and somehow seeing that multiply into if I would see another 10 people actually start into farming in the next 5 years in this area, I'd be totally excited. We didn't have enough kids.
So for me, the headline would be, and I'll try to keep it to a headline. Northern Rockies economy is buoyed by its return, by a return to its resource roots.
Okay, do you want to elaborate on what would support that headline?
No. So I mean, you guys have already identified, you know, the strength of this region, and you know, with respect to Fort Nelson being a service center for the resource industries here, and when I say that, I mean agriculture, I mean tourism, I mean oil and gas, and I mean forestry, right? Either in not just the old ways, but in the way those industries are moving forward. So, you know, oil and gas, for instance, you know, you don't necessarily have to be selling gas down the line. If you're generating electricity and you've got a data center that's using that same resource in a different way, and it's moving forward. So whether it's forestry or whether it's tourism or any of the ones that with oil and gas, we're able to do that in the new ways that are being experienced out there. So that returns us to our roots, but in a more forward looking manner, right? And so the bases are there, you know, the first dollar industries are there. It becomes a matter of now getting that resource moving into businesses who want to use it to do something. So again, you've got to get the basis going in the oil and gas industry. So you've got to get gas moving down the line. I don't care whether it goes to the United States or whether it goes to Kitimat and they liquefy it and send it. It's got to go somewhere, and protecting that opportunity, right? And there's all kinds of things going on around how we should be allowing Alberta, you know, to sell its gas. But we were told very clearly back in the day when LNG was put into place that Alberta wouldn't sell gas to LNG until it was flowing. It doesn't mean it had to be dissipated. It needed to be flowing from all parts of BC. And so that's something we need to protect, is that promise to us. Forestry, we need, you know, we need to have, and we've been working on this already. We need to have that industry or that project that becomes the basis of a cluster. Right? We know the problems that we have here with respect to the mixed forest type that we have, where aspen and poplar is a less valuable, or seen, I guess. You know, there are others who will say it is valuable, but it's a less valuable species in the world. But yet we've got a 50-50 mix here, and you can't do anything with the saw logs until you've done something with the aspen, because you can't leave it in the bush anymore, right? So you can't burn it. I mean, people just don't accept those anymore. Governments don't accept those. So that's a barrier that we have to overcome. So with an anchor project that can use that sort of thing, now you've got a cluster that can really build out because the saw logs become available either for sale, right? We're that far down that we have to really reconsider the potential for getting some revenue moving into the economy based on basic log sales, until you're able to see that those other clustering smaller companies start to see the value and start investing. And even a small sawmill is, you know, millions and millions of dollars. So you know, the resource has to be readily available to people. And then whether, if we're talking about, and again, the baseline with respect to what our annual allowable cut is nobody knows right now. We need to understand what has been taken out of the working forest here by the fires and by the regulations that have been put in place and by the potential land use restrictions that could be coming our way. What is the basis of our forest industry here? And then we'll be able to sell that, hopefully, to this clustering group, even if they're not connected. The cluster is based on that anchor project, and then the value that can come out of that in, you know, moving forward into the future. So I think that, and then, you know, the transportation is a big part of that. So whether they're going out, you know, the trees are going out of here as logs, or whether they're going out of here as furniture, you've got to get it out of here. We're a long ways from anywhere, and it's got to get out of here somehow. And there's just not enough money in forest manufacturing to move it by truck. There go the fight that we've been having with the rail. When it comes to the highway and being the service center of the Alaska Highway, a service center, you know, it's not, we need to get away from this idea that it's just a wide spot in the Alaska Highway that people stop for gas. There are so many things here that people could be. We could go on a trip from here to Watson Lake, and I could take you to places. It would take us 6 days to get from here to there if I showed you all the places I know. And right, and there are other people that know way more about this region than I do. So that's just places along the Alaska Highway that we could visit. So, you know, there's that whole huge potential that is there, and is, you know, we are the gateway to the Muskwa-Kachika, right? Untouched wilderness in British Columbia. So I've been blabbing on for too long. There's somebody else. Go on ahead, John, please.
I think my headline would be, you know, Northern Rockies building a future beyond boom and bust. And I've lived here a long time and I've seen the challenges now that we have during bus slow times. And when things were booming, we also had challenges, fly in, fly out. I mean, we had one of the busiest airports in British Columbia, not 13 years ago. And I think we need to diversify what we have and strengthen what we have. Instead of having one big forest industry, we need a few smaller ones. And that way, if one goes down, the other ones can pick up, so that if someone does, let's say, lose their job at one mill, there's another job for them just across the way, instead of them having to look out of the community. Because if we lose, let's say we lose an oil and gas worker or a timber worker, they're taking their whole family with them. And maybe their wife was a nurse or of some other significance to our economy. So we're not just losing that one job, it's that entire family. As a person that's raising a young family in this community, it can be disheartening to see what's happening right now, and it can be difficult to think of the future for your kids. And I want a future where my children could live here beyond high school, maybe not during university, but a place they could come back to and call home and have those opportunities. And I think of the sign that you drive by and you come to town, opportunity at its peak. Wouldn't that be nice if we could just take advantage of all the opportunities and create new ones? So I don't necessarily want Fort Nelson to go back to the way it was, even in its best time. I think we can do better than that. And we have to think differently. We have to think outside the box to get there. And that means putting a focus on the things that we're good at, and then finding completely new industries that we don't even know are out there yet that we can take advantage of, and more stability at the end of the day, because boom and bust is just, it's too chaotic to raise a family in. So.
That was just totally, I'm just gonna feed into that because my headline was NRM marries the environment and technology equaling economic success. And so I don't know, I don't know what, other than a data center, but there's all kinds of other technological opportunities that I would like to see investigated, right? I'm very much of the mind, as you are, Councillor Roper, is that we can't look back and think that we're going to do things in the same way and have that measure of success, right? So I think we need to be looking to the future, see what's out there. Yeah, so that's my headline.
Great. I would just follow up on the last two related headlines. Just asking, if you don't have any specifics, that's okay. But were there specific things that you're interested in exploring that you wanted to mention within those categories?
Well, I'm very much interested in AI opportunities. So when we're talking in terms of apprenticeships, like how is AI going to impact educating, post-secondary education in the future? And how can we, because we need to train our people, you're going to try to attract a business here that needs apprentices, but they can't go to school here. You know, you got to send them to Dawson Creek and they're gone for, I don't know, however long, 3 months or
Somebody
6
else
months.
picks them up while they're there.
And then they're headhunted from there, or they fall in love. Like, that's the other thing we've always said, we need like a local dating service here, because like that could be I don't know. Yeah, so I'm really interested in the AI opportunities in healthcare as well, and what that could mean for us. Yeah, did you have any specifics?
Well, just that I don't know what I don't know. And there's things around the corner that we could be getting into the ground floor of. And I mean, you made a great point with your headline, environmental. I mean, before our gas plant shut down, they were undertaking a project to sequester carbon from the gas. And it was supposed to be a big project that not only would have treated the gas from this area, but potentially from other places where they wanted the carbon taken out of their gas. And that could have been huge for this area. And that could have been seen as, hey, Fort Nelson, we're the most environmentally friendly oil and gas production center. And so there are just things like that, leveraging what we already have and how to make the world a better place through the economy. And just having just jobs. I think everything kind of falls down from there. If you've got a community that has really good jobs, you'll have your different sectors will flourish. So.
And by the environment, I meant like, let's not fight our environment, right? Like we're cold. So like what economic opportunities are there that are because they need cold weather? Like they can come here. We have cold weather, you know, so that type of when I talk about environment, that's what I mean. Although, you know, environmental, sustainable ways too, we absolutely very much need to be thinking in terms of that, but let's not fight what we have. Like, let's not try to be something that we're not. This is what we have. We have cold weather. We have winter for 6 months of the year, maybe 5 months this year, because like, look at our fall. So yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Just one more thing came to mind. I don't know if Fort Nelson will ever be the destination for a lot of people, but we're certainly a place that is on the way to their destination. And wouldn't it be nice if people could just plan to stay in Fort Nelson a day or two, spend their money here, and then on their way up the highway. So that's another thing is really taking advantage of the 300,000 plus tourists that are driving through the region every year, and just making the best of that scenario.
Okay, great. If we could go on to the next slide. I know
We've been an hour. We've been an hour. We got one question. You haven't scheduled enough time with that.
that's okay. Well, it's all really good discussion. Okay, we can go a little quicker, just the next few questions. But so this question is referring more to your values and your priorities, and just anything that you want to tell us that would help guide our work as we put the strategy together in terms of not just, you know, generally jobs, investment, but any other, like we've some examples there: youth retention, sustainability, inclusivity, any other, I guess, values, priorities that should help shape what we're coming up with.
The word adventure. Like we want to attract businesses and residents that have a sense of adventure. Like that's one of the reasons why most people are here, right? It's like they don't want the same old. Like we have some people that work for tech companies, but they live here because they have that sense of adventure. They want to go up the highway. They want to do all the hiking. So yeah, that's what always comes to mind for me.
Okay, great. Anybody else?
Well, for me, it's safety of the community, right? Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. For me, it's safety of the community. There's really, I believe that there's 3 values that long-term communities are built on. That's safety of the community, health, and education. And we've talked a little bit about both of those. And, you know, we're not necessarily responsible for those 2. And, you know, when it comes to community safety, the RCMP, we don't have an awful lot to say about them, obviously, the way things have been going. But we do have the ability to, you know, firefighting, rescue services, that sort of thing. But I don't want to, we have a potential item on our agenda tonight that potentially pits jobs against community safety. Right, and so I don't want to get into a situation where I need to be worrying about, you know, adding value, and I don't know what, I'm just not sure what value that is to ensure that we're not pitting the 2 against each other. You know, like some kind of a big emitter that might want to come here and, you know, and emit. That's, yeah, there's 150 jobs, but it's emitting something that's poisonous. That's extreme, I know, but it's that point that I'm trying to get across that I think is value, that balance.
Okay.
John, did I see your hand go up out of my peripheral vision? No.
Okay, that's great. We can go on then. So we mentioned a number of strengths that we had seen in our initial work, our initial data analysis. Anything else that we haven't talked about so far in terms of other strengths of the community and the region that you think we should try to build on?
I would say maybe arts and culture should be included in that strategy as well.
Is that something you view as a strength right now to build on? And could you
Well,
elaborate?
something I do in my personal life, my professional life, I manage the Phoenix Theater here. But I think arts and culture services is important for attracting and retaining not just residents, but a workforce to come and live in your community. So I'd like to see some focus on that for sure.
Yeah, one thing that we always try to prioritize in our strategies is focus on community welfare. So it's not just about dollars in all circumstances, but there can be things that support attracting residents, but also just make life better for the average person living here. And so it's a good thing to bring up. And, you know, it'd be curious at some point hearing a little bit more about your own experience managing other assets in the community and where you think there are things have worked well, I guess, and that can be really be leveraged.
Yeah, I'd love if our cultural institutions could take part in this. That'd be the museum, the library, and anyone else that might offer some insight that would be helpful for sure.
So I think we've talked about a lot of the strengths when it comes to the resources and that, but I think there's a couple missing. One is the history of this community, and I know people are not used to looking back or don't want to look back, but the history of this community from, you know, its original fur trading roots to up to now is it's something a lot of people know about, and it's really a fantastic history. So there's that I think that's a strength that that potentially we build on. You know, the outdoors is obviously the other one that we've been talking about with the access to the access to the outdoors. I mean, that's why we have many of our professionals. It's for that reason. Yeah.
So just building on what Councillor Roper said too, is I've often thought that there is an economic opportunity if we had the capacity to bring in like companies that want to have their AGMs in different places. Those types of, I remember years ago, somebody from the Mining Association contacted me and they were very interested in having their AGM here. And yeah, anyways, but currently we don't have the capacity to take that on, but I think that could be a really good opportunity. And then the other thing that I wanted to add is our sense of community. Like it's different here than in a lot of places. And I remember at one, I don't know, workshop we were in, or somebody had the tagline of, don't be scared, we say hi here. Like, it was, you know, I thought that pretty much sums it up.
There was one more that I had that slipped out of my mind when I was talking, and that's the recreational services that we have. We have recreation here that communities do not have in bigger centers, right? For as far away as we are and remote as we are, the recreational services here, and I mean the core recreational services within the town itself, are second to none.
Okay, great.
Both in facilities and programming.
Okay, that's all great. We can go on to the next one. Okay, so the other side of that, I guess, is the most significant challenges, and we've talked about some of those as well, but anything else that we haven't brought up that you'd like to make sure we have on our radar?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest challenges that we have are decisions that are made at the provincial and federal level that impact our ability to do anything. And then, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
You have transportation, obviously.
Yep.
Because we talked about health and we talked about secondary education, right? Yeah.
Transportation runs the gamut, you know, just the distance of 400, whether you're talking about ambulance services, health, or just kids having to
Mhm.
go out of here to go to school, right? To transportation services. I'm sorry. Okay.
I'd like to see a focus on markets that are further north than us, like places like the Yukon, where we're closer to them than other places. And I think it was CryoPeak that started delivering LNG from this area because they did a risk analysis of driving their trucks through the mountains, and they came to the conclusion it would be less risky for them to start operations here and then go further north. So yeah, focus maybe on those markets that we could be tapping into. That would strengthen our economy or link our economy to those stronger economies in some way.
Now, that's a really good one, John. We look at grocery trucks going through here with fresh produce and meat to Alaska, to the Yukon, to the Northwest Territories, right? Those are things that they can't put on a ship because it takes too long. The vast majority of what they get up there it goes by ship. But we see every day those trucks supplying goods to north.
And then I had a thought, I don't know where it fits in here, but I didn't want to lose it, is like, I want to somehow make it so that we, the NRM, can go out and find the opportunities, not here waiting for the opportunities to come to us.
Okay. Hopefully that's something we help you do through this strategy, but yeah, okay. Anything else? Okay, I know we're running up at the end of time here. If we could just, I think we have one more. Do you know any more questions we have, Chris?
Just one.
Okay, so this is sort of just an overall wrapping up kind of question, but and we kind of touched on it throughout the discussion, but what do you hope to achieve by developing this strategy, and how will you know when it's worked?
When we're not in a bust.
When we're booming again. Yeah, this is a tough question. Go ahead.
I would say when we're still doing good during bust times, when we are taking advantage of all those opportunities, and that we're still stable even when the world's economy has kind of deteriorated, that we can still be resilient against all of that. So.
And that we show some activities that we're actually doing, like an investor strategy. That's what you're talking about, where we're actually, we're not going to invest the money ourselves, but we've got a strategy to identify and contact potential investors, right, to our community, and then the supporting, I want to say infrastructure, but I mean the means, like it's broader than infrastructure, the supporting resources to be able to support that kind of an activity.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
One thing I'll add to that, a lot of our projects carry some similarities, but they're never entirely the same. We also work on a lot of investment attraction strategies. And I like to think of investment attraction strategies and economic diversification strategies as somewhat two sides of the same coin. In some of our strategies, we have included a number of pieces that are directly related to how to operationalize investment attraction. So we actually procure access to a database that's quite useful. It's called FDI Markets, and it gives us municipal level investment information for what's coming into Canada, which companies are investing, how much they're investing, what were the reasons that they chose that particular site. And that can help us to recommend firms to actually reach out to that are likelier opportunities based on their profile. We can look at common trade shows that are within either the British Columbia, within Western Canada, most likely to be the ones that are most fruitful that people can attend and seek to solicit that type of capital attraction, I guess. So hearing a lot of this, I think that'll be a major dimension that we want to build in and make sure is well represented. So just a note to say that we've done this actually quite recently in a community in Alberta. So it'll be something to bookmark for the final strategy as well.
Any other final comments? Okay, well, thank you very much. Apologies for being a little bit late arriving, but this was really, really helpful for us to get us off on the right foot in the project. And we may see you around the next couple of days. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I thank you for coming and putting the thoughts in our mind and, jogging our minds a little bit when it comes to this. I would be interested in sitting down with you guys if there's an opportunity, for sure, sometime.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great.
When I'm not digging my sewer up. So I think that's everything that we had for this particular meeting. So we can adjourn, have supper, and then start the next meeting. Okay? So, yeah, we're adjourned. Thank you.